So why are people investing in so much, so many things that don't make long-term investments today? A lot of that, I think, is due to a big misunderstanding about what the value proposition of blockchain is. For those of you that are familiar with our content, you'll know kind of we're really bullish on blockchain scaling and blockchains being something that can bring efficiency to all sorts of industries. But when you look at the kind of history of crypto, what the word that's often used is decentralization, which really means making things very inefficient. And why are people trying to decentralize things? Largely to do things that governments or other state actors cannot censor or affect. So when you look at the design choices of every kind of popular blockchain that people are familiar with, the BTC version of Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana to a lesser degree, but still to a large degree, what you see are design choices that make it such that rather than try to scale and have really cheap transactions to allow people to store lots of data on chain in an efficient manner, the first optimization is for, hey, how do we make sure that if governments wanted to seize some of the assets here or regulate us, we could potentially illegally resist that. And most actors that are building crypto and blockchain companies, they don't actually want that. But unfortunately, they're building on blockchains where that was a key part of the design decision. So what did this lead to? For years, we've been kind of singing the song of, hey, this stuff is really unsustainable. And now this has kind of moved from out of consensus to something that's probably, somewhat of a consensus idea, at least in the broader world, that, rehypothecating crypto assets and lending against them is not likely to be a good business. And, some of the examples of, companies that we've always felt, wow, this really doesn't make sense, especially at the valuation of FTX, BlockFi, Celsius, Voyager, and those companies are no longer with us today, and there's still a lot of companies like that that we think will not be with us over the coming years. Another thing to think about is just forgetting kind of the thesis and everything. Like, raise your hand if you used a decentralized project today or a product. Okay, about 4 set of hands, and obviously there's different definitions of decentralization. There's kind of the technical version versus the social and political version, but for the most part, we're not using decentralization today. So what are we using today, or what could we be using that's actually going to provide value and not just be this vehicle for speculation? So blockchain can affect, and we think will affect, all sorts of industries over the coming years, but where we're seeing kind of the most attractive companies and the most momentum today are those that are leveraging micropayments built on scalable blockchains within gaming and within fintech. And what we see amongst these founders, there's a few qualities I have on screen here, is that they're very much about how do we create value for our customers, which should be something that I think all founders do, but I think in crypto specifically is often not really necessarily part of what founders are focused on. Maybe it's, hey, how do I have a big crypto market cap? Or how do I get lots of adoption versus, hey, how am I actually solving a real problem in the world? And unlike a lot of crypto projects, there isn't like a big white paper or a lot of complexity from the founders you'll hear from today. Most of these companies are very straightforward to understand, even if you don't have any kind of technical background or understanding of blockchain whatsoever. And then another thing that we really like about the founders that are leveraging blockchain for scale versus for something in the crypto world is that they're often long-term oriented. So the crypto world has attracted a lot of some of the most short-term oriented founders and builders and investors because for so many years you could have made the highest returns if you were lucky of short-term trading and flipping these crypto assets. Where if you're leveraging blockchain for the long term, given that today is still not really a popular thing, if you're trying to build this and staking kind of your life and your career and your business on this, you kind of by definition are looking at the long term because you don't have a way to kind of cash out along the way via some token. So some of these logos below, most of them you will hear from today, and what pretty much all of them share in common is that efficient payments, micropayments, and being able to work with data in ways that are not possible without a public database is all part of the infrastructure they have built. So what do some of these micropayment businesses look like? Who here in the last week received an article from something they didn't have a subscription to and then didn't read the article? A few more hands than the decentralization, products here. Right now, because micropayment-based rails are not really, popular and outscale, although we think that they will be soon, the New York Times and Los Angeles Times, they have to use credit card processors, which means that for them to charge you money, the minimum viable transaction is really like $1.50 or $2 because they're paying around 30 cents and 3% of every transaction. So charging someone 1 cent or 20 cents or even 50 cents doesn't really work for them given how much money has to go to their processing rails. A blockchain we're really excited about has a median transaction fee today of something around 1/50,000th of a penny. So you can potentially charge, a cent, or like we see with Google here, under a cent, and still be able to have a good gross margin and have a new type of business model. So a lot of what we're investing in today is literally not possible without scalable blockchains and micropayments. And we think, being able to read whatever newspaper articles you want and pay on a per-click basis, as well as a lot of other, ideas and businesses you'll hear from today, will start to become a lot more popular over the coming years. And then when we're investing in these companies, rather than investing in SAFs and ICOs and all these kind of complex instruments that don't really protect investors, at Unbounded Capital, we're investing in companies and the kind of traditional instruments that are used widely in Silicon Valley. We're using safe notes and we're using priced equity rounds and just kind of keeping it simple rather than trying to bring complexity to how we're making investments. Today you will be hearing from next Handcash, followed by Unisat, DXS, RF Labs, Aldea, Asset Layer, Haste, as well as from a number of founders that we have not invested in, but we really like and want to hear them share their story.